Hey friend, welcome to Healthy by Heather Brown. Do terms like mental health, intermittent fasting, and buzzy wellness words make you feel overwhelmed? If you don't know where to start with loving the life you already have and letting your good things grow until they become daily habits, I got you, mama. So join me as we unpack what it looks like to live a life well loved and redefine a new approach to health from the inside out. Think of this space as your girlfriend's group text with the occasional dad joke and point of view from my Yankee hubby, Eric. We promise to give you key takeaways that you can implement right away to pursue health in your mind, body, and soul because God made us that way. Don't stress. Let's hop on this Hot Mess Express together. Hello, girl gang. We're thrilled today to welcome Brittany Thomas to the show. Y'all have been begging me to talk about the Enneagram and personalities on the podcast, and we're finally here. Whoop, whoop. It only took us 3 seasons to get there, but here we are. Brittany is a certified Enneagram coach and founder of Enneagram Explained, where she shares the information you need to better understand yourself and the growth work tips to help you be the best version of yourself that you can be. So, Brittany, our Enneagram expert, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, of course, everybody's going to want to know this before we even get started. What is your Enneagram number?
Right, of course, the question everybody wants.
Yes.
I am a 1, or specifically a 1-winged 9. There's a lot more I could actually add to my type, but that's the main basic that everybody will kind of understand.
Yes. And give everybody just a little bit of like your personal life, like tell them how many kids you have, tell them if you don't mind what your husband's Enneagram number is. And then I'll ask you to break it down super simple in case people are like, what is the Ennea who?
Yeah, not a problem. So, okay, first off, my husband is a 5. And so
mine is 2.
Okay,
I'm like,
awesome.
Eric is a 5 as well. So I'm like, tell me all the things, girl. Tell me all the things.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's a very good pairing for us. I like it. Between the two of us, we have 5 kids, which is usually shocking for people who hear we're a 1 and a 5. But they've kind of molded themselves to what we kind of need to be. They're very much our children. They're not, a type 7's kids. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of us in a nutshell. We used to live in Seattle and recently moved down to California for my husband to take over being the president of a Bible college. He used to be a pastor and now he's it's pastor in a very different way now.
Yeah.
So it's very ministry steeped.
That's awesome. Now, when you say that you have kids and for people, well, okay, I'm like, rewind back to the basics. First of all, tell somebody that's listening to this that doesn't know what the Enneagram is. What is the Enneagram?
So basically the Enneagram is a personality typing system. But unlike a lot of the other ones out there, it doesn't just say, this is what you are, the end of the story, you're an introvert, the end. It tells you this is what you are, but more so why you are, because it digs into the actual motivations behind what you do. So you can have a neat freak be any of the 9 types, not just a particular, stereotype. 1 is usually the neat freak, but anybody can be a neat freak. So it goes behind that and asks, well, why are you a neat freak or, whatever else trait you have. And so it gives you the understanding of who you are or why you are the way you are. And it gives you a way to work on the unhealthy aspects of you instead of just leaving you there.
Yes. And I feel like that it's really been cool I am a huge personality quiz type. I just think it's fascinating. So before the Enneagram came into my life, I was very into the Myers-Briggs test, and we had to take that in college at Stanford because my husband and I met at Stanford, I guess I should say first. And then I'm a 3 on the Enneagram and he's a 5. Like I was saying, I'm a 3-wing 2. And what you just heard Brittany explain is, she could go a lot deeper than saying a 9-wing 1. But a lot of times it cracks me up because when I ask somebody what their Enneagram type is, and I'm like, oh, no, sorry. It doesn't work that way. So do you mind even sharing a little bit about what a wing means? And maybe just give a very brief, short rundown of like 1 is this, 2 is this, like where do they take the test, all the things.
Yeah. Okay. I'll try to make this short. Usually that's like a 45 segment in itself.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
You have so much good info.
Condense it. So we'll go through the types and then I'll explain the wings. So there's 9 types. Type 1's core motivation is to be right or good. And the flip side of that is they want to avoid being bad or wrong. Type 2's want to be wanted, needed, lovable. I like to use lovable instead of loved because, of course, everybody wants to be loved. So they want that. The opposite of that is they fear being unwanted, unneeded, not lovable. Type 3s, as you probably know, they want to be valued and admired, tossed in there, but not all of them want this, spotlight, climb the corporate ladder kind of thing. So it's valued in their own area. And they fear failing, not being valued, not being admired. Type 4s.
I can confirm from a personal standpoint.
Yeah. That's good. I got the answer right then. Type 4s want to find their own truest self. So sometimes we just say authentic, but it's deeper than that. They keep digging and digging and digging to try and find the deepest, truest self of them. They also want to find meaning and significance in things. They don't want to be a cog in the wheel. That would be one of their fears, is just being mundane and like everybody else. They want to have some sort of significance. Type 5s, as we both know, want to be competent and capable, knowledgeable. But the flip side of that doesn't get talked about very often is their core fear is being invaded, depleted, overwhelmed, particularly overwhelmed with emotions and other people's emotions. So they try to be capable to not have to have those problems.
Exactly. We'll get into all that later. Don't worry.
I know. Yeah, I'm sure it'll come up. Type 6s. Type 6s want to be secure or safety. Supported is usually secure and supported are the two that I really like, because some of them kind of throw safety to the wind sometimes. And they fear being, of course, not supported, not secure, not, they don't have their group committee guidance. They would hate that. Type 7s. 7s want to be satisfied or content. And the flip side of that is they fear being deprived or limited or trapped in particularly emotional pain. They don't want to have to feel like they're stuck in the negative emotions.
And I also, it's funny because in the beginning, before I learned more about the Enneagram, I was really torn between whether I was a 3 or a 7. And so I would try to ask friends, family, people that work for me, all around me, what do you think that I am? And the people that were my friends would be like, oh, you're 100% a 7. You're the fun one in the group, blah, blah, blah. But the people that work with me or know me in the day-to-day stuff, they're like, oh, you're 100% a 3. You are so driven, this, that, and the other. So I think it's so interesting when you feel torn on what you are, but also, and you can say that this is completely wrong. I might be speaking out of turn, but what someone told me to do was to read and it's probably not called negatives. It's like when you're not in good health, I think is how it's phrased in the Enneagram. When you read when you're not in good health of a 3 or a 7 or whichever two you're torn between, the one that makes you cringe on the inside because you're like, oh, I can relate to that better. That was the 3 for me. It made me almost sick to my stomach because I was like, ew, I hate that I struggle with that sin or that sin pattern. And that was when I was like, okay, if I had to type myself, I am a 3. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Looking at the negative list or the unhealthy list would be the nicer version. I know a lot of people get really triggered with negative. But yeah, the unhealthy traits, those will usually pinpoint things pretty quickly for you. Okay, so we did 7. 8. Type 8s want to be independent, autonomous. They also, I love throwing in, because we don't talk about it enough, is type 8s want to be protective of themselves and those closest to their people they want to be protected of. And so they fear being weak, controlled, because that can lead to them being manipulated, harmed, vulnerable. And so it's very much all about that independent, protect me and those I love. And then type 9s. Type 9s want to be at peace, harmonious, kind of a calm. Calm sounds about right. And so sometimes a lot of times it involves other people, right? They want peace within their whole group. For particular 9s, it's more focused on inner peace. And so they don't mind too much with the conflict of other people, but they do want their inner peace. But yeah, the flip side of that would be they don't want conflict. They don't want separation from their people, not necessarily physical separation, although that definitely is a part of it, but the emotional separation, the fragmentation. They want to feel connected to everybody.
Okay.
So yeah, those are the 9 types. Wings come in, and that's really just a shading of your type. Like if you picture the 9 types as the color wheel, like as a 1, I might be a blue. But as a 1 wing 9, I'm a little bit more blue-purple instead of a 1 wing 2 being a little bit more blue-green. And so it's just this kind of hint or shade of you're still that type, but you have a little bit more depth and color to you.
So since obviously this is a relationship, or it's really trying to focus on relational health, how do you feel like the Enneagram helps people work on their relationships, particularly for us as believers, when at the end of the day, I think that and we'll get into this later too, but the Enneagram has come under a lot of heat from a lot of people in Christian circles recently. I know Jackie Hill, Perry Hill. Am I saying that right? Jackie
I
Hill
think so.
Perry.
I get the last 2 mixed up.
Yes, I feel so sorry, Jackie. But she has, brought some controversy around it. I know Allie Beth Stuckey has said that she doesn't really appreciate it or agree with it. And I am very much so of the mindset, I would say, that I think that at the end of the day, I realize that God created me and I am made in his image, and every single human being has infinite value and worth because he created us. Now, I think it's really interesting, like I said, to check out any personality type quiz, because I love people. I'm a people person. So I'm like, the more that I can understand you and understand what meshes well in our personality or what might be a rub that I should stay away from, and like I was saying, what made me uncomfortable with the 3, it's not that I'm saying I want to embrace that unhealthy part of me. It's saying like, no, I realize this is a sin area for me that I want to work on. That's kind of how I view the Enneagram. I think that there is, like we said, a lot of controversy around it. So I'd love to hear from your perspective. I guess, is it a trigger for many people that you come in contact with? Why do you think that it is so controversial compared to other personality type quizzes?
Yeah, it is definitely. Yeah, I don't think there's any other personality type with a controversy behind it.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I do come across this a lot, obviously, in being in the ministry world. It's fairly divided. And so most of that controversy comes mainly from one of the founders, sort of like there's a bunch of co-founders that kind of all cobbled this together, and it's still being developed even today. They're like working out the fine, tweaking everything. And
which
so,
we love. I'm like, you always want to get 1% better every day, no matter what.
It's always better. It's a little annoying because I feel like that means you have to keep up on it. But I mean, you do in any field, right? Psychology, medical, like you want your doctor to keep learning. So,
yes. And in social media, it changes by the hour. So
I know. Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, the main controversy is because one of those co-founders is on record. You can watch the video of him saying that he got, he used automatic writing for the Enneagram. And that obviously is very concerning because it can be demonic, automatic writing. But it also can just mean he sat down at his desk and started writing everything he had in his head before then, because originally the Enneagram was more of an oral thing. Nobody really had any written books or anything.
Okay.
And so it's more likely that it's that. And so people type that little soundbite and they blow it out of proportion. There's also, as far as I can tell, it is one website that tries to claim that it came from an actual demon. They name him and everything, but the guy they're accusing of saying that actually he writes this huge long letter, clearly stating that he never said that, and it's never the case.
Wow.
So it's really hard to dig through all of those sources, and I feel like that's the thing with researching anything is you have to go all the way to the primary sources. You got to get, the info from the horse's mouth. Yes. And so it can get really hard when it's harder to find on the internet and you think you found the end, but it's not actually the end. And so sometimes you just have to do your due diligence, or at least find somebody who is linking all those original sources. And not many people are doing that, unfortunately.
Brittany, do you have something that I could link to in the show notes that could take them to something that you trust as a valuable resource on that?
Yeah. actually.
Thank you.
Yes.
We're linking in the show notes, so y'all go read it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure he has links by now, but Gospel for Enneagram, he has a bunch of YouTube videos, and I think he's got a free ebook. Lots. Even if you go on his Instagram, he's got little reels. He even did one after a few of the major hot topic controversies popped up. Sure. So he's got that. He also has this course called The Real History of the Enneagram. I don't know if he has that linked on his site, or if it's not on Gospel for Enneagram, it's on tylerzock.com, I think.
Okay.
Because that's his name. But it's this whole full module course that you can take. It's a class, and it's beyond deeper than anything I've ever seen. So he's the only one that I've seen that really goes into all the depths and all the primary sources. Sure. So I love him for that. And then of course, the other thing to realize with the controversy and stuff is the Enneagram is just a tool, just like psychology. It's not associated with any one religion. It's just a tool that we can use, and we can use the lens and verbiage of Christianity if we want to fine tune it and make it connect with Christians more, but we don't have to. And of course, other religions can do the same thing. So that is why sometimes you'll find an Enneagram book and be like, this feels like this religion, or this is definitely not Christian. It's just because they've taken it and used their religion or their belief system with it. And so there's plenty of neutral Enneagram books, and there's plenty of Christian Enneagram books. But that's why it's a psychology tool, just like you can find biblical psychologists and secular ones.
Yeah, so, that's such a good way of putting it. I like that. So Brittany, how did you get started on this journey of becoming an Enneagram coach? And because we were just talking about social media, how things change so fast. Do you feel like Instagram has become a large part of your business at all?
Yes.
Well, technically, yes.
That was the start of my business. So
awesome.
My Enneagram started as just an Instagram account. So it is almost the whole business.
Amazing.
So initially, I actually dug my heels against the Enneagram, thinking it was either some silly fad or something. Which is weird because I, love personality tests.
That's wild.
Do every single thing that I can possibly find, even the silly ones of what color sweater are you? I'll take it. Sure. But for whatever reason, this one's no, this is just a silly thing. People are getting too into it. It's not going to be beneficial or whatever. Thankfully, something changed, and I got curious about the Enneagram. And
I was going to say, Brittany, actually, I do think you bring up a good point, that I think that just like you can make an idol out of exercise or TV or your favorite celebrity or whatever, some people do take the Enneagram too far. I don't think that you or I are saying that's not the case. I think some people do, and it's they're more worried about, well, the Enneagram says my struggle is this, and then I should only be married to this type of person. And so that's almost my new Bible. Where no, ultimately at the end of the day, you have to hold that anything you learn about the Enneagram up to biblical truth, just like you do anything else in your life.
Right. Yeah. It's just a tool. It's not the only tool either. It can help your life, but it's not going to save you. It's not going to perfect some other areas in your life. It can't touch mental illness. It might help with some of the symptoms, but it's not going to help, treat other areas of your life that it's just not designed to help you with. Right. But it is amazing for understanding yourself and understanding others.
Yes.
But yes, you don't want to make it the end all of everything. Something finally changed with me, got into it, borrowed all the Enneagram books from the library, started a few Enneagram book groups, and then eventually started my Instagram account, got certified as a coach, and then added on my website because it was just Instagram, and that blew up, of course, because I started pretty much right at the peak time when it was getting really, really popular for Enneagram.
Yes.
And so just kind of blew up. But I wanted somewhere that people could actually go and read longer format Enneagram info and have it savable and shareable and everything. And so the website was born after that.
Now, do you mind me asking, do you have a team that helps you manage all of it at this point, or is it still just you?
It is still just me.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. I think I've always done things like that. And so I've run other blogs. I kind of still run a couple things. but
Yeah.
a lot of them are kind of like self-sufficient and back burner right now. But
Sure.
so I'm very used to, I think me being a type 1, like schedules and rhythms and finding the shortest way to do things has very much helped me. But that said,
Yes.
I'm like, eventually adding a team member will probably have to happen if it keeps going the way it's going, because I have so many spinning plates and eventually they will fall if I don't start delegating things.
Yes. Well, Brittany, I actually have a whole course on starting your team to help you in social media and stuff. So if you ever need it, holler at me and I'll help you out. Okay. So you've mentioned on your Instagram that you really love helping people change and that you get excited about giving people the tools to become the best version of themselves. Can you elaborate on what you wish more people just understood about the Enneagram?
What I really wish people understood about the Enneagram is that it's not just a silly personality test, but rather it's a self-development and relationship tool that can greatly enhance how we understand ourselves and those around us. It's particularly for me anyways, that relationship component is huge because I'm actually not a very intuitive person. I kind of, especially, definitely before the Enneagram, I kind of just walk through life thinking everybody's the same with me. Like, why are they getting upset about this? Because I wouldn't get upset about this, or I would do it this way. Why aren't they? And so for me, now knowing there's 9 types and beyond, because there's nuances, but that greatly helps me of like, oh, like, I still don't understand why you're doing it, because to me it feels weird, but I get why you actually are, because you're this type. And so it's really given me much more understanding and even empathy for people.
And I can't remember if it's Ian Morgan Cron, if I'm saying his name correctly, or who it was. I've read several Christian-based books on the Enneagram, but somebody mentioned that it's like there's 9 different types of glasses or lenses that you can view the world through, and how funny that we all just assume that everybody sees the world the same way that we do when everybody has different like life experiences. We like always try to dumb it down, when in reality it's like, no, our creator is so much cooler and does not put us in a box like that. There are so many different worldviews out there. It's pretty cool. Hey mama, do you feel like you are surviving on chicken nuggets and goldfish and haven't stepped in a gym since college? Or maybe, on the other hand, you feel like you're checking every health box and are still hitting a brick wall? Well, I'm here to help you redefine what it means to be healthy from the inside out. I'm a former fitness instructor and everyday mom who is passionate about helping you create a beautiful life you freaking love. So I'm opening the doors to the Healthy by Heather Brown membership to the public and can't wait to walk alongside you and be your cheerleader. When you join, you'll be added to my exclusive Facebook group. You'll receive my Sunday reset training that will help you create promising, sustainable, healthy choices from the inside out, which will in turn lead to a more joy-filled life for busy moms. Live coaching and workout classes with yours truly. You asked and I listened. We'll talk about how to balance your whole health when you have kids and life get busy with school and activities. It includes grocery haul ideas and accountability as we all reset together each Sunday. There will be so much offered that you won't find anywhere else on the internet. Are you ready to take one step out of stress, shame, unhealthy boundaries, and fatigue and add healthy rhythms to the Hot Mess Express? When you're ready, I'll see you on the other side of the link in the show notes. I'm excited and ready to hold your hand and meet face to face. So with all that said, do you have any favorite Christian recommendations or resources or books that you recommend people start with to understand it?
Yeah. So you already mentioned Ian Cron, but The Road Back to You by Ian Cron and Suzanne Stabile is like the classic newbie Christian Enneagram book. It's great because it'll give you the basic foundations and help you kind of try and figure out who you are, which type you are. It's also amazing for book groups. They have a study guide that you can use with your book groups. So that's actually what I usually do for book groups. So that one's a great one. And then I am sure most of your listeners are married, or
they
many of them are.
And mamas. Mamas.
Yes. So for married couples, and honestly, you can even use it for other relationships, but it's designed for married couples. I really recommend Becoming Us by the McCords.
Oh, I haven't read that one.
Yeah, it's great. And honestly, even just for understanding your type, it's amazing because of how they break down everything. Manual for your spouse. It's definitely not a perfectly complete user's manual, of course, but it's definitely a very beneficial tool nonetheless in your marriage. And so knowing your type and your spouse's type definitely can help you avoid triggering each other less and navigating conflict more easily. It's not going to get rid of conflict, I'm sorry, but it will help you deal with it more easily.
Where is that silver bullet, by the way?
Right? I know. It would solve all the problems.
I'm like, oh, in heaven. Jesus is the answer. Okay, got it. One day.
Yeah. Yes, someday. And so, like I've kind of talked about with those core motivations, the Enneagram can help us trigger our spouses less if we know their core motivation, because like I said, the core motivation is your deepest desire and basically your worst fear, and like not worst fear of spiders, but like your deep motivational worst fear, the thing you are trying to avoid at all possible costs.
So tell us, if we don't know what our Enneagram type is, or our husband hadn't taken the test yet, where would you recommend they go to take the test?
I'm going to add some disclosures first.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. Most people like to use the Enneagram test because that's what we do. We take the test and we get our answer. And that is fine if you realize that the test will give you a result, but it is not definitive. In fact, most Enneagram tests are at best 70% accurate. And that's whether they're paid or not. You know, if they're free, it doesn't really matter. They're at best 70%. Some are worse, but
sure.
You're not guaranteed a correct result. And unfortunately, it's just because they're based on traits. Like, it's, do you like hanging out with people? Do you like to have things organized? And it's okay, but your traits don't determine your type. And so they can really misconstrue things if you appear to be one type just based on your traits, but your core motivation is actually something else. So when people want to find their type, I do say you can take a test because I think it's helpful to whittle it down from 9 to, usually I try to say 3 or to 5. So take a test. My preferred one, since I assume most of your listeners are Christian, my preferred one is your Enneagram coach's test.
Okay.
And technically, it's not really Christian until you get to the results page, and then she kind of Christianizes a little bit. But
okay,
that's my favorite, mainly because she'll go through the main questions, and then there's this last final section where it's basically a death match between your 2 highest types, and she, tries to like narrow it down that way instead of just assuming, well, your highest score is this is what you are, and so it helps with the results a little bit. You'll get a little bit more accurate, not always, but it's probably your best chance.
Awesome. Well, we'll link that in the show notes too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, great. The test will give you your top result. It'll be like, she might even word it as you're most likely, but don't take that. Take your top 3 to 5 results. And they give you percentages so you can see you're, 90% 1, but you're 80% 3. And so they kind of look a little bit maybe. So take those top 3 to 5 and then go dig into their core motivations and see which core motivation resonates with you the strongest, which core desire you would pick above all the others, and which core fear would terrify you the most. And that's most likely your type.
Okay, that's really helpful for people to hear, I think. So how can, you may be like, oh, we don't have enough time for that, because that could also be a whole podcast episode. But since we do talk about health here a lot from the inside out, how can different Enneagram types reset and recharge each week in a way that is best for their health? Can you, almost like how you did, like type 1 is this, right? And maybe you can't do it on all 9, but maybe you could pick like 3 to 4 and give it examples. I think that could be cool.
Yeah. You're right. Like obviously the list could be extensive, right? Like I feel like the way you can recharge and self-care and stuff is exhaustive, and there are a lot of repeats. Like I think, walking and journaling is like the stereotype answer for every type.
Sure.
But yeah, I try to break it down a little bit. And so I'm actually going to break them down by a Enneagram grouping called stances, which is definitely a whole nother podcast.
Okay.
But they have similarities, so that's why they're getting paired together. So types 1, 2, and 6, a way to recharge and rest is probably going to mean that you need to stop doing, because you are always doing, and particularly you're always doing for other people or other rules, regulations, agendas.
Yeah.
And so you're going to need to sit and actually stop doing things and engage in a relaxing hobby. And I have to add relaxing because all of my hobbies are productive hobbies. They are creating graphics for my Instagram. It's kind of a hobby, but it's also work. So relaxing hobbies, watch TV, take a walk, things that are not going to be productive or even necessarily benefiting other people. Types 3, 7, 8. It's probably going to mean you need to start resting alone, away from the people who feel your core desires and distract you from your actual feelings. So staying home, or if you don't want to stay home, go to a coffee shop by yourself, go kayaking, have a spa day, something where it's going to be quiet enough and not distracting enough where you can actually reconnect with how you were actually feeling instead of how you've been performing and doing things around other people.
For sure. That's good.
Hard, but good.
I force myself every Sunday to go take a bath because I'm like, I am forced to sit here and it just be me. And it's like, and it's really hard for me to do because being an extrovert too, I want to connect with people and that fills my cup. But the problem is when you don't even realize where you're depleted because like you're saying, you can't pull away and feel like, no, how does Heather inside actually feel and do? And anyway, it's all part of my Sunday reset. So I'll link to all those resources.
That's great. Yeah, no, that I have a very similar story, I guess. So my in-laws have a hot tub and my husband can go out there, sit, just listen to music forever. And he's like, well, why don't you go rest in the hot tub just by yourself? I could not take it. Like I was just sitting there. I'm like, what do I do? Like I need to do something. I probably made it maybe 15 minutes max. And he's like, why are you out already? I'm like, I got like bored. Like I feel like I need to be doing something. I couldn't sit still that long. It probably would have been better if I had music or something. But like I was just going crazy. I'm like, it's probably restful and helpful for me, but like you have to get over that wall to actually, it's like a running wall. Like you actually have to get past it to actually properly relax.
It's so true.
Yeah. Okay. So 4, 5, 9, I didn't forget about you guys. You are probably going to need to use some method to connect you with how you are feeling. So a little bit like 3, 7, 9, but this is more connecting with how you're feeling or how you're feeling in your body. And so take a walk in nature, journal, listen to music. I'm going to add the caveat for 4s. Don't just listen to the music that you are currently feeling even. Don't listen to just sad music if you're sad. Try and listen to more than that because you probably have something else going on. Take a bath, get a massage, something that is going to allow you to, connect with how you're feeling because you might try and disconnect from that, particularly 5 and 9. But also connecting with your body because all 3 of those types tend to not really focus very much on what's going on in their actual body. So exercise is usually a good thing. And I know not all of them want to do high intensity cardio, but walking or yoga or something just to kind of reconnect them with it.
Well, we always talk about that here on the Healthy with Heather Brown podcast because it is just so much more about just your body or just your mind or just your spirit. And all of us are made uniquely, like we talked about, by our creator. And so I think it's really cool that this tool allows you to almost see where your weaknesses are and what, like you're saying for the 5s, like sometimes they struggle to connect with their physical body. I am like all day long, like I want to feel my physical body working, moving, going, doing. I struggle to sit still. Final question. As an Enneagram 9, what are some ways that you can consciously reset and recharge in your life right now? And maybe it's just something that is making you feel the most like you right now.
Okay, so not to be a 1, but I'm an Enneagram 1. 1 wing 9. But I am a 1. So I have to actually schedule my recharge time because I will not do it otherwise. I'm a little bit like a 3 like that. I can be a workaholic because there's always something left on my to-do list. And if there isn't, I will find something to add to it. So I clock out, mommy clock out at 7 p.m. When the kids go to the room for either like wind down time for the older ones or actual bedtime for the younger ones. And so I'll stop doing, which, whatever it is. And so I'll switch over to typically just watching shows with my husband. It's not necessarily the healthiest version of recharge time, but it is for me because it stops me from doing things.
Yes.
And so It's usually just watching shows. And then I also tried to actually schedule in just like a short 30-minute walk. Usually in the mornings before the day really starts and all my doing has to start all over again. And so those are usually like, they're like the beginning and the end of my day, right? Like I can't do it during my day. Like I've kind of tried during nap time, right? Like be like, okay, this is when I'll just sit and relax. And I'm like, no, like we're doing the dishes and the chores and I've got this to do for work.
And nap time somehow always gets like cut short, or they wake up. Nap time or quiet time around here is never really quiet.
Yeah, my kids still do quiet time, and my oldest is 17. They know 1 to 3 is off limits, but it's never actually off limits. Like somebody's going to come down the stairs and ask me a question.
Oh yeah. Or they're hungry, or they need to go to the bathroom, or out toilet paper. I mean, something. Yeah. I'm so encouraged to hear you say that about enforcing quiet time, even for your 17-year-old, because I talk to so many moms that are like, yeah, at 3, my baby dropped their nap. And I'm like, well, you still do like quiet time or something, right? And they're like, no, they don't want to. And I'm like, you're the parent. Like you need them to have quiet time. I would die if my kids did not have quiet time.
Yeah, no, I think until they move out, we have a designated quiet time, which obviously saves my sanity.
Right.
But I also think like it's a good thing. Like my girls, I have 3 girls, 2 boys. And so my girls are all in the same bedroom. So they don't actually get fully quiet time, right? They have each other to play with.
Right.
But it is more mellow and there's no screens and beeping toys and stuff. It's quiet. But then I also think it's really good for particularly my oldest. He's our one extrovert, where he can just learn how to be in the quiet. I think it's a really rare thing that not everybody learns anymore because our lives are so busy and constantly full of things. So it benefits your kids too.
It really does. And it gives you an excuse to take away the devices. So I know parents are always like, well, you know, I don't know what to do with them in between 3 and 5, and I still have to work. So, but if you're setting those boundaries and they don't ever expect to have devices during that quiet time, then it's like, you can read, you can color, you can draw, you can build. Like my boys, like you're saying, they're going to complain about it and they're going to be like, well, can I go play outside? And if it is a nice day, sometimes quiet time becomes an hour instead of 2 hours. Like we're definitely flexible. But I appreciate that input. That was like a great bonus tip right there. And then I lied. So I said final question, but since we're talking about kids, I do have to ask you this, and I realize we're coming up on time. But can kids have an Enneagram number, or does that not develop till they're older? I've heard lots of mixed things about it. So if people are like, can I type my kid? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. And definitely like one I get all the time. And as a parent, I totally understand. So our type is set really, really young. So usually like by the time you're 3. So technically, yes, your kids already have their type. And it doesn't change. So once you have it, you're set with it for life. But kids are very flexible, moldable. They have a very elastic type of brain. And so you can't necessarily be like, well, my toddler is just, enforcing rules and fights for justice. So, and he gets angry really easy. He must be an 8. And you're like, well, he might be, but he also might just be a toddler. Like
it might just be
terrible twos make them all look like an 8.
Right.
So you can't necessarily just go by their traits. And it gets more, it's kind of like cement where like the cement's there, but it doesn't really firm up and set until they get a little bit older. So usually 8 to 12 is where it starts really starting to settle, and you can kind of start seeing that. And then usually between 12 to 15 years old, they can probably find their own type if they're self-aware enough. A lot of kids aren't. When I took my kids through it, my oldest was not self-aware. He was convinced he was a 3 or a 5. And I'm like, no, you're not a 5 like your dad. There is no way. 1, you're an extrovert. Not that you can't be an extroverted 5, by the way, but like everything about him is not that. You're not your dad. And so it took a long time to finally like help him figure out his core motivations.
Okay,
cool. He's actually an 8. So technically, we can't type our kids and we can't type other people because all we can see is the surface stuff. We can't actually see their core motivation. And so the standard advice is you can't type your kids. That said, We all do. So, like, it's not going to stop you. I know you're not going to, because I didn't, and I typed all my kids.
Right.
So I like to start with the stances, which I know we did not talk about. We kind of did when I talked about how to recharge and relax. Those are the groupings. But we did not. You'll have to have me come back and do stances.
That's right. Too.
But it's a little bit easier to pin down your kids based on those. And so you have one group that looks towards authority figures and what's needed and other people. And they base all of what they do and how they react based on what is needed, what other people might want, or what the rule is.
Okay.
So it's easy to see those kind of kids, even if you don't have their exact type down. You can see that they might be in that group. Then you have the assertive types who are just going to kind of make their way and get what they want. Not that they're going to constantly be like, oh, undermining your authority as a parent, but they're going to be pushing for it, right? They're not going to have a problem arguing back with you and, you know, trying to push the envelope. And then we have the withdrawn group. You know, I might as well tell you the types anyways. Okay, so 1, 2, 6. 1, 2, 6 is we call them the compliant group, but they're also known as the dutiful group. Those are the type that are looking to people and what's needed to do what they need to do.
Okay.
And then 3, 7, 8s are all the assertive types. Those are the ones that are just going to push the limits and try and debate and maybe win their case.
That may be true. Maybe true.
Right, yeah. I've got one of those kids. And then 4, 5, 7 are the withdrawn types, where they will withdraw to get what they need. And not necessarily like they're going to hide in the corner until you give them their cookie, but they're going to withdraw to either get some sort of security or avoid conflict or figure out who they really are in this place, in this world and stuff. And so that's a lot easier to figure out because it's a bigger group and you don't have to pin it down to the exact type. So usually you can kind of figure out what your kids are there.
Yeah.
And so like 8 and 11, you can kind of maybe hold a type loosely. Like right now, my oldest 3 are probably 100% typed. I've got an 8, a 9, and a 4 for my oldest 3. And we're pretty confident. My second born is a 9. We thought he was a 2, and then we worked through the core motivations and thought, oh, you actually help because the 9's core motivations. That's why you're helpful. But he's actually still unsure. He's like, well, I don't know if I'm a 9. I'm like, oh, okay, 9 or 2, maybe. Well, who knows?
Time will tell.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, he's still relatively young. He's almost 16. But my youngest 2 are only 10 and 8. Mm-hmm. And they're right in that pocket where their cement is still firming up. And so technically my youngest is a carbon copy of me. So I'm pretty sure she's a 1. Like she was 5 and she's like, rules are rules. And you know, she was totally upset, crying, and she like looks over in the corner. She's like, just so you know, brother, your picture's crooked. And like, like, oh, like, okay. Like if you're not a 1, I don't know how you couldn't be.
That's hilarious.
But like, I've got a few kids where I'm like, okay, like I'm not 100% sure of my last 2 kids. And so I'm holding them mentally in my head of like, you're probably this type, but I'm not for sure. And so I haven't told them their type because technically it's not my place to tell them their type because I could be very much wrong. And I don't want to set them on the wrong path of being mistyped for the rest of their adult life until they figure it out. I'd rather them figure it out themselves so that hopefully, 1, they learn about the Enneagram much better and holistically that way.
Yes.
But yeah, they don't have to go through life thinking there's something when they're not and things aren't connecting and so they can't grow.
Right.
And so it's mentally in my head. And it really only for me, I tend to only use it when they have hard days.
Okay.
So like, I'm not really thinking like, oh, you're an 8 and it's a good day. Let's go do this. It's more like, oh, like particularly for my daughter, because she's a 4 and with 1 and 5 parents, we're not feely people. And so she's all the feels. And so for me, it's much easier to be like, okay, like you're crying, you're upset. And for her, it's like the end of the world. And it'd be very easy for me to be like, it's not, like, get over it. It's fine. Just like, it's not a big deal. But knowing she's a 4, I'm like, okay, like I can allow you to feel those feelings. I can allow you to cry for 30 minutes in your room. But eventually I'm going to have to, like, if she keeps going forever, I'll have to like, okay, like we need to get off the roller coaster now. You need to get somewhere healthy instead of just cycling through it.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's normally in those hard times when I have to like think about using the Enneagram with them of like, okay, if they're a type this, then they're probably really scared about this. Or like if I accidentally left my daughter next door, I know as a probable 6, she's going to be holding my hand for the next like 2 trips that we go to the grocery store because now she's terrified that I'm going to accidentally forget her. We did that once. We didn't actually really forget her, but she thought we did. And so
yes.
like,
Well, that's all that matters. It was real to her. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. Well, tell everybody where they can find you online.
Yeah. So Instagram at Enneagram Explained is where my daily bulk of the content is. But my website is also enneagramexplained.com. And that's got all the like, long-term storage. I've got a post on parenting. I've got a post on how to confirm your type because sometimes it's confusing how to pin down between a couple of them. So, and a whole bunch of other great
resources. Yes, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed this episode, will you please screenshot it, share it to your stories, tag Brittany and I, and tell us what your Enneagram type is, or tell us what you think it might be, or just tell us maybe what you learned from today's episode, and maybe did it even shift your perspective on the Enneagram. We would absolutely love to hear that. And I hope you guys have a beautiful day. Talk to you next time.